Welcome to the Everyday PM podcast, the podcast where we discuss project management principles for your everyday life. My name is Campea, and I am a certified project/program manager with over a decade of experience working for various industries, including healthcare, retail, consumer goods, tech, and now marketing as well. I am so excited to welcome Dave, and I'm not going to try to butcher your name in this call, but Dave, who is the President of Beskar, an IT services and consulting company that provides elite IT solutions to small, medium, and large businesses and organizations. Dave, welcome to the podcast. For those who have not met you yet, please take a brief moment to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Dave Shrivastav, and I am the President of Beskar. Been in IT in multiple capacities for the past almost 25 years, which makes me sound really old, but I've had a great career so far, and I'm looking forward to discussing that more.
Yeah, I mean, just decades of experience across different industries. So I definitely have a lot of questions for you about how you started and how you've come to be where you're at today. So why don't we start there? Let's start with your professional journey. Tell us what you wanted to be when you grew up, and then eventually kind of what led you to being now the president of Beskar.
Sure. So growing up, I was always interested in technology. I was always trying to take things apart, and I wanted to know how they worked, right? But I don't think my parents always enjoyed that aspect of it. So I always was interested in that, even in high school, and just trying to figure out things, working on the different tech clubs that they had there. After high school, I got the opportunity to be an IT intern for an engineering firm, which was Management Concept Systems and Services, which was a great foundation for me for that first year of learning, the IT from the real professionals, and just building from there. So I've learned a lot in that process. I've gone to different technical schools and just really observed at that point the whole aspect of IT. That in the late 90s was more, it was the computer guy back then and not information technology, right? So that it was right at the beginning of that boom where IT was first establishing as almost a trade as well as a career at that point. So yeah.
And then you find yourself kind of at the growth of that opportunity to expand more to just, being the person you call when I'm guessing being the person you call when your computer doesn't want to turn on that day, but there's just the world expanded for you in that way. And I know that you've worked across IT operations as well as project management and kind of all of those different types of industries. So how were you able to manage ensuring that your experience in IT translated to some of the other industries that you worked in?
Right. So that was the tricky part. As my career was growing, I was being offered different positions to be more in the management field, but I always wanted to stay in the engineer section too, because I didn't want to lose the knowledge I had, nor did I want to not learn more of as things developed and changed and things of that nature. So I always kind of did the management stuff. I always wanted to, put my sleeves up, as it were, and get into the engineer aspect. I've had the privilege to work with different types of industries in IT, which at the beginning was a little difficult when you first learn a new infrastructure, and then I had to go learn a different infrastructure and then a different one. So that was always the challenge there, because everyone has their network set up differently. So it was a fun process to go through, but it could have been a little frustrating at times. So I always tried to make things easier through documentation and things of that nature before I moved on to my next role.
And that's where the kind of the PM probably side of it kicks in quite a bit, right?
It is, especially more in the past 10 years, I would say. I've been more in, there's been the project side of IT and then the support side of IT. So I've had to become a project manager, even without having that title, become a project manager just to kind of get through things and learn all the project manager type things to organize my teams and make sure the project gets done on time. I always try to make it under budget and under time. So yeah, all those types of things I'm sure you deal with all the time.
No, absolutely. And our audience is very much interested in the differences between a non-IT PM and a IT PM. And I come from this thought process of, if you're a good project manager, you should be able to project manage any type of project. Now, when it comes to IT, I still believe that, but I do think it's a superpower, or maybe even a Jedi Force type trick, that the fact that you have experience in IT that better positions you in many ways, just from the psychology of it all. And so where I'm going with this comment is, you are a PM, you're thrown into a tech world, and the expectation is that you should know what I do. If I'm an engineer, if I'm somebody that's working on a piece of software, et cetera. And so there's that expectation that you walk into when you work for that type of industry, that coming from your background, I can see how you were best suited to be able to just walk into that type of learning, where you said, I didn't necessarily have a project manager role, but I kind of also fell into it because of the duties and the expectations that were set for me working in technology. So I think, to me, it's interesting to hear your journey and how you got there, because I think a lot of our audience will have similar, if not the same, experiences in terms of having the tech or engineering background, and then in many ways being expected to run a project in the way that a project manager would.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. And it has made it a little easier, because in the IT world, we like to use a lot of acronyms. We like to use words like DNS and DHCP, and I can go on for hours probably on all these different acronyms. And we all know what we're talking about. But like, if we had someone like you or someone else that has a ton of project management, and we're saying all these acronyms as engineers, okay, what does that mean? It's like a whole process of learning what that is. So yeah, I've had that advantage in the IT industry and doing some PM stuff there. So
yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it necessarily discounts you if you don't, but gosh, it's just to have that acumen going into a PM role, it just makes you infinitely more valuable in that way, because you can speak the jargon, right? So for those who have been listening to the podcast for some time, I'm sure have heard a mutual acquaintance of ours, Greg Christensen, who he's been on the podcast multiple times to talk about PM stuff. And he came from a space where he wanted to learn more about project management, which has been a wonderful experience and journey for he and I to have those types of conversations. The reason why I bring him up is because you talked about acronyms, and it made me laugh, because don't tell Greg this, but every time he says CMMS, I always have to go online and Google and look up what's CMMS again, because I hear it as the acronym, but I forget what it actually breaks down into. And so when I think about being in conversations based on past experiences, being in the software and the tech world, and hearing all those terminology getting thrown back and forth by the team, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it made you feel a lot better to not have to do that upfront kind of learning, to just understand what everybody was talking about. So
absolutely.
Do you feel like it helped integrate you into your team a lot smoother, or did it present any roadblocks because you came from that background?
I think, there were times where I had engineers trying to go through the explanation of this and that, and it's like, I know. It's so good.
I can imagine.
So that part was good. The other positive I would say is, if we're getting down to a deadline and they're not making their goals, I can say, okay, what can I take off your plate? And as an engineer, do myself, and then we can circle back and go through what was done. So that part of it was good. IT is also a very vast field right now. And just because you know voice doesn't mean you know infrastructure, and just because you know networking doesn't mean you know the other thing. So there's some things I definitely am stronger at than others. Voice is not one of those things I'm personally strong at. So when I have a voice guy and he says, we need to do this, okay, we need to do that. So that part of it was the challenge too, of learning everyone's strengths and building that winning team to get everything done. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good piece of advice for those that are listening as well, is the taking the time and opportunity to like you said, know what each team member does. You don't have
Right.
to understand it to the point of you're an engineer now, but know enough, right? And I think that's how
Right.
you also can grow respect in the industry that you may not be so familiar with. But I think going back to your experiences, do you
Sure.
feel like engineering, tech, now you've kind of got PM on top of that? Is that the accumulation of all of the things that you're passionate about? And do you feel like you're at a point in your career where you're doing all of those things that you love?
I do, and especially running my own business now, I have to wear all those hats. I
Mm-hmm.
have to wear the IT hat where I got to do a lot of the engineering and the tech stuff myself, which I have that experience. So I'm happy to do that. Operations, I'm running a business and have employees and have to deal with all those types of things. And the PM stuff I do every day, whether it's planning a vacation with my family all the way up to planning a
Yeah.
big email migration as an example. So I use that all the time. And everything I've learned in the past, 20 plus years is super helpful. So I've always appreciated all the different roles and all the different mentors in those roles that help teach me along the way. So.
Absolutely. And you made a leap that I think may be very challenging for some people to even consider. You've been in
Right.
this industry for quite some time. You've had a lot of different experiences. You ultimately decided to go into consulting and start your own business. That's a huge decision to make. What was that aha moment for you where you said, okay, I've kind of done all the things I wanted to do in the corporate world, and now I just kind of want to do it on my own with my own company?
Right. So there's a couple things to that one.
Sure.
So I've always done like side work on myself for the past 10 years or so, more because, I enjoy working with a whole bunch of people and I wanted to keep my skills strong. So I've always done a little side work, whether that's, different IT projects or just simple support. And then I was working for an IT firm and they had to downsize. So I was unfortunately let go. And then I was looking for my new role, whether it was going to be a contract or a consulting or whatever. And my wife actually said to me, "You've been talking about starting your own thing like forever. Why don't you just do it?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be fine. We'll figure it out. Everything will be fine. Just go ahead and just start it up. And whatever you need from me, I'll be here." I'm like, okay. So I started going down that road. And it was scary, really scary at first,
Yeah.
because for 20 plus years, I was used to that paycheck being there every 2 weeks. And you don't necessarily have that all the time. And it was getting a lot of tools and a lot of processes and a lot of things in place. But what was exciting was I could do it the way I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've always had supervisors and managers where you don't always agree with their process, but it was their process and you respected them enough to do that their way, even though you might think, oh, it might be better this way or that way. So
Sure.
I was able to establish that now and do it the way I wanted to do things, down to every little aspect. So that was very exciting for me.
And down to even the naming of your company. So let's hit on that really quickly. How much of that
Sure.
the name Beskar, did your wife have any influence on that, or was she just kind of the one that propelled you and pushed you over the edge to start the consulting company, and everything was your decision from there on out?
Everything was based on my decision, but I also wanted to make it very much an us thing. So I always had talked to her about the bigger decisions.
Yeah.
And I could talk to her all day long about, this tool because of all these types of things. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but whatever you think is best.
Yeah.
So that part was cool. And as you can see from my background, I am a huge Star Wars fan, and Beskar does come from the Mandalorian TV show. So at first I wanted something solid. So then I thought about solid something. And then I couldn't find a domain name that I really liked to go with that, because it's a pretty common name. So then I moved, and then I wanted something that was really Star Warsy, mainly because I grew up loving Star Wars. I remember seeing the movies with my dad when I was really young, and so I wanted something along those lines. I went to Carbonite, but obviously that's a pretty big name with the backup company.
Sure.
So going off the solid thing, and then the Mandalorian aired, and it kind of just hit me as soon as that term came on that show. So that's what I went with, and I love my name. I have a lot of folks I meet in different networking groups in my area. They're like, I love your name. I wish I can have it. I'm like, well, you can't in Ohio. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so wonderful. And I didn't put that together until maybe a few minutes ago, right? When you
Right.
told me before we started recording. But the
Right.
fact is of the matter is now it's your company, you have the influence, you get to facilitate it the way you would have envisioned it. And I'm sure that's based on all the experiences you've had working for other people and learning what you like and what you didn't like about how things were facilitated or run. I did go onto the website, and one thing that I find is really incredible about your business, Beskar, is that not only do you offer a lot of services, right? So it's not like you're just there's one type of thing that you offer as a consulting company. There's a plethora of it. So that was the first thing that I thought was impressive, is that you essentially could be a one-stop shop for somebody who's looking for that type of consultation. The other piece is, and I think you even market it, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think you even market it in the about, is you offer very affordable pricing for what you are able to offer. So in terms of being accessible, I think you've positioned the company in a way that smaller businesses, individual entrepreneurs could potentially reach out to you. Do you find that you're kind of getting that diversity in your clients just because of the way you position Beskar? Was that intentional for you to be able to do it that way?
Yeah, it was. Because I saw a lot, in previous IT firms I've worked for, I saw a lot of our smaller clients, and they just simply could not afford a solid IT infrastructure. And they had servers that were 20 plus years old, and that wasn't the right way to run a business. And part of the reason why I wanted to start my own thing were all the things that we've talked about, but also I wanted to provide quality IT services to businesses that may not be able to afford it. And if that meant I had to adjust pricing or whichever, then I'm happy to do that. And I am able to provide these services at a good pricing that can help these smaller ones and also help the larger ones. Especially now going through the pandemic and everything, we're still trying to get back to where we were 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And if I can help businesses get there by these pricing, then I'm happy to do so.
That's amazing. I think it's incredible. Accessibility, affordability. I think that's all things that people, they shy away from, especially when we just had a podcast, I think not too long ago, maybe 2 episodes ago, where we're talking about starting up your own business and how these smaller businesses are easily shy away from reaching out for these types of services because there's this misconception that it's going to be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get going what they need to get going. And so I love that vision that you've set forth. And I love that it's created a diverse clientele for you as well. Do you have any projects that you are particularly proud of that the Beskar has taken on in the past few years?
I've done a couple email migrations. One was very difficult, and the new thing these days is Office 365. I guess in the past 5 years, 10 years or so, and businesses want to migrate from their on-premises server to the cloud, and that's very intimidating. You have a lot of data in your email, and your databases and everything else, and losing that would be a nightmare for any business. So I really pride ourselves. I have a couple consultants that work for me that do that specifically, and I'm really proud of that. The big thing that I love doing is whatever the project is, I like working with the business owner or the manager or whoever they put me with and figuring out a good way. And a lot of clients think they know which way they need to go, right? I like to go through the whole process so we can, what's your end goal, and let's figure out a way to get to that end goal. Because it may not be, there's always 100 different ways to get to that end goal, but we want to do it so we don't lose data and that we don't mess up anything currently in place, and that all the employees and the users during their working hours can still work and still function properly so that they can still provide those services to their customers.
Gosh, yeah. There's just so many avenues that I think, somebody who is not so well versed like myself in IT, that's the things that we need you for. You need to tell, in many ways, please help me understand what needs to happen. And I like the fact that you help your customers feel secure. Data is so important. Integrity is so important. And just making sure that those types of projects aren't so daunting as I think some folks will probably think they are. And I think just to summarize this conversation, when I think about a journey a project manager can take, Dave, you've really described a path that I think a lot of my even just close colleagues are on the same, if not similar path of gaining experiences in different types of industries, maybe not starting as a project manager, but falling into the project management role yourself. Eventually taking all that you've learned and the ultimate dream of starting your own consulting firm so that you can take everything that you've experienced in your corporate life and apply that into something that works for you. I think Dave, you're living the dream of some of these PMs that are listening to this podcast right now. So is there any words of wisdom that you can help distill to our audience in terms of if we're earlier on in our journey and we want to do something similar, how do we get there? Any type of words of wisdom, any Yoda-isms that you'd like to drop on our audience?
I would say always take the risk, and nothing's going to come easy. Beskar's been around. It'll be a year next month, which is amazing, crazy to me. And I still have goals that I'm not going to hit in the next few years. It's a long-term goals, and that's the key. I think you have to have those goals, and you have to be not afraid to take those risks and those goals. When I started, I didn't have any clients at all. So I'm putting out money and not getting any income in return. So it was hard. I was able quickly to get a couple of clients to at least be sustainable. But it's a process, and it's scary. It's really scary. And because you get advice from mentors and even other folks and other friends. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Just go ahead and do it. Well, it's scary. So it is worth the risk. And it's good to get rented advice. We've talked about Greg Christensen a few times. He's, since me and him have talked, he's been a good mentor to me. So I talk to him every few weeks, and he always has great wisdom to show me to keep going down. And he puts it in the way, and of course he has that great radio voice, right? So it always sounds great. And it's been very helpful to me. So
good. Yeah, I like that too. Just leaving off on that note of surround yourself with mentors and people who can even just speak realistically to you about what you need to do to get to those goals. So, and setting goals, that's another point for the audience too. Make sure you continue to set those short and long-term goals. And it's also a great thing to hear that you have the support as well, because when you break it down for us, you're investing your money in something that should be your security and that sort of thing. So it's easy for people to give you advice, I'm sure, because they're not spending their own money to give you that advice. So definitely taking the risks, making sure that it's a calculated one. Sounds like it comes out from your journey as well. And so for those that are considering doing something similar, I think you've given us a pretty good roadmap of how to get there. So Dave, this has been a wonderful conversation. Anything else that you want to share with our audience?
No, just thank you again for having me on your podcast. It's been a real pleasure, and glad that we were able to connect and get this done. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And everyone should check out, if you're looking for IT solutions, any type of business, right? Or organization, small, medium, large, definitely check out Beskar. And I think you, Greg, and I should probably look forward to having a conversation, us three together on a future podcast. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So Dave, that will do it for you and I on this installment of the Everyday PM podcast. For folks who want to continue the conversation with you or learn more about your company, where can they find you online?
You can find us on our website, which is www.beskarco.com.
Great. And I know, Dave, you and I are both active on LinkedIn. So the professional platform as well, if you want to connect with both of us to just talk more about project management or anything else like that, or maybe even Star Wars, because clearly we're both
talk about Star
fans.
Wars all day long.
So feel free to connect and join the conversation. You can support the Everyday PM podcast by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We're on every podcasting platform you can think of. Just search for the Everyday PM. You can also watch the video version of this on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ann Campea. Make sure to click the bell so you know when new content goes up, and subscribe and like and comment and all those good things. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support of the podcast. We appreciate your conversations around it, and continue to drop us comments and feedback. We definitely appreciate making sure that we provide the best content for you. So that will do it for Dave and I in this installment of the Everyday PM podcast. And until next time, thanks for joining, everybody. Take care.